So I was asked, of course, what kind of man do I want? And my answer used to be, I want a man that, is in touch with his feelings and is able to express his feelings and his emotions and is just very agreeable and nice. When in reality, why was I finding the men that weren't that way attractive, or the ones that I was going for? And then those ended up being like bad boys in my head, when what was happening was I was getting confused of what I really wanted, because I thought that was the proper answer, was that, well, I do want a nice guy, and that is gonna always agree with what I say. But I did that too, and you get this like ick, and this is why. Jordan is gonna explain it so well. Let's get into it. Mr.
Hello.
Jordan, excuse me, Doctor.
Welcome to another episode of After School. I'm Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. Today, we'll be summoning our inner monsters. Without further ado, let's dive in. You know, you might say that someone who is incapable of cruelty is a higher moral being than someone who is capable of cruelty. And I would say, and this follows Jung as well, that that's incorrect, and it's dangerously incorrect, because if you are not capable of cruelty, you are absolutely a victim to anyone who is. And so part of the reason that people go watch anti-heroes and villains is because there's a part of them crying out for the incorporation of the monster within them, which is what gives them strength of character and self-respect, because it's impossible to respect yourself until you grow teeth. And if you grow teeth, then you realize that you're somewhat dangerous, or maybe somewhat seriously dangerous, and then you might be more willing to demand that you treat yourself with respect and other people do the same thing. And so that doesn't mean that being cruel is better than not being cruel. What it means is that being able to be cruel and then not being cruel is better than not being able to be cruel. Because in the first case, you're nothing but weak and naive. And in the second case, you're dangerous, but you have it under control. And a lot of martial arts concentrate on exactly that as part of their philosophy of training. It's like, we're not training you to fight. We're training you to be peaceful and awake and avoid fights. But if you happen to have to get in one, and I guess the philosophy also is that if you're competent at fighting, that actually decreases the probability that you're going to have to fight, because when someone pushes you, you'll be able to respond with confidence, and with any luck, and this is certainly the case with bullies, with any luck, a reasonable show of confidence, which is very much equivalent to a show of dominance, is going to be enough to make the bully back off. And so the strength that you develop in your monstrousness is actually the best guarantee of peace. And that's partly why Jung believed that it was necessary for people to integrate their shadow. And he said that was a terrible thing for people to attempt, because the human shadow, which is all those things about yourself that you don't want to realize, reaches all the way to hell. And what he meant by that was, it's through an analysis of your own shadow that you can come to understand why other people are capable, and you as well, of the sorts of terrible atrocities that characterized, let's say, the 20th century. And without that understanding, there's no possibility of bringing it under control. When you study Nazi Germany, for example, or you...
So, real quick, before he gets into that, what we have lost as on the ladies' side is that we're capable of any darkness. But that's just not true. We're actually just as capable of having dark thoughts, being cruel, being we're actually pretty dark when you recognize within your own self things that you've done in the past, or that you've when you have worked through it, that what it took to work through it and why that was that you needed to. We're just as dark. We're just as cruel as men are. As what we perceive as what men are,
It seems that women base, from what what I've seen, women only base how dark they are off of how much people know about them. So they can, as long as they if they can hide their true selves from their friends and from society, and they can do behind closed doors, or
and
they
push
don't have
it
someone
out of their own heads,
right? If they don't have nobody calling them out about it and saying this is terrible, which they don't do, then they believe that they're good as they are. There's nobody like men.
100%.
As far as men are concerned, there's always a world critiquing us.
Yes. Yeah. And more than likely, men are gonna have their darkness on Front Street because they are the leaders. They are the men. They are the ones that are in charge in a sense, you know? So their darkness is going to be called out because other men are being the heroes and be like, no, you cannot, like, because that's the goodness in them of being like, no, you can fight against that darkness and do that. That's what you're supposed to do as a man. So what we have lost as ladies is that we're completely not capable of darkness and it's only men. No, that is completely wrong. You as well are capable of darkness. Sometimes one may say, like it does in the Bible, that we are the weaker vessel. Just saying that we are more to be that way, even unintentionally, but it still doesn't matter. You still are responsible for it. So what we have to do is we have to take control of that back, and understand that we too have darkness just as men do. But to bring it back around to why as ladies we think that we want the nicer guy, that's only because we want him to be nicer because he chooses to be. It is he's in control of himself. He is a stand-up guy out of control of his darkness. That's what it is. We want the guy that's able to have that darkness and be able to tap into it, because all of us are that, but he chooses against it and he can fight against it.
Well, you need it for protection.
Right.
You need it for protection.
Yeah, because we in our nature, we can't help. We're thinking about how we can be protected and how our children are going to be protected. Even if you aren't even thinking about kids yet, your nature is already thinking about that when you are pursuing a guy. So you can feel it if a guy is, excuse my language, but a weenie, or if he is not. You can sense that. And so then if you're not feeling it and why he's kind of being a weenie and I'm able to walk all over him, then definitely can't have kids with this guy, because how is he going to run the show once we have kids and things like that?
Hey, comments. Do you think that in the comments, I got a question. This is from my husband.
This is my husband, by the way.
AKA
producer.
I wonder if men would be more this way nowadays, because we aren't like that as much as we were before. Would we be more like that if women were doing things that were worth protecting? So like if you were placed in a situation in which you had to protect someone worth protecting, would that be more common in men?
That's a great question.
Let me know in the comments.
And from what I've learned, even from you all and from the comments and from these videos, what I've learned is that we have just taken all of the masculinity away from you, because how can you? If you go to step up for a young lady, sometimes you'll get even in trouble for that if you save her freaking life. Like, that's the kind of damage that we've done, to where the guy can't even step up and be the hero because we won't allow it. So how so let's get back into it.
Study the Soviet Union, particularly under Stalin, and when you study Nazi Germany, for example, or you study the Soviet Union, particularly under Stalin, and you're asking yourself, well, what are these perpetrators like? Forget about the victims, let's talk about the perpetrators. The answer is, they're just like you. And if you don't know that, that just means that you don't know anything about people, including yourself. And then it also means that you have to discover why they're just like you. And believe me, that's no picnic. So that's enough to traumatize people, and that's partly why they don't do it. And it's also partly why the path to enlightenment and wisdom is seldom trod upon, because if it was all a matter of following your bliss and doing what made you happy, then everyone in the world would be a paragon of wisdom. But it's not that at all. It's a matter of facing the thing you least want to face. And everyone has that there's this old story in King Arthur where the knights go off to look for the Holy Grail, which is either the cup that Christ drank out of at the Last Supper, or the cup into which the blood that gushed from his side was poured when he was crucified. The stories vary, but it's basically a holy object, like the phoenix in some sense, that's a representation of transformation. So it's an ideal, and so King Arthur's knights, who sit at a round table because they're all roughly equal, go off to find the most valuable thing. And where do you look for the most valuable thing when you don't know where it is? Well, each of the knights looks at the forest surrounding the castle and enters the forest at the point that looks darkest to him. And that's a good thing to understand, because the gateway to wisdom and the gateway to the development of personality, which is exactly the same thing, is precisely through the portal that you do not want to climb through. And the reason for that's actually quite technical. This is a Jungian presupposition too, is that, well, there's a bunch of things about you that are under.
And so this is where we're at as ladies, is not walking through that portal. And why we cannot make it work with another human, because we don't know ourselves. We are walking around having no clue what is actually what, because we are too scared to confront those things because it doesn't feel good. But just as men have to do, we as well. In order for things to properly move forward and to actually work, you have to also know yourself and the capabilities that you're able to have in darkness, and in order to fight against it. If you don't know it's there, how can you fight it?
You would have to push to be a decent person to realize that you have a job in society that you're not doing. And if you stay away from looking at the fact that you have a duty in society that you must do, then that way you don't have to do it. And the worst person, it seems to me that the worst person of the two is the one who refuses to look within, so that they don't find that they have a duty and they must come down off their high horse and actually help with society.
Developed, and a lot of those things are because there's things you've avoided looking at because you don't want to look at them, and there's parts of you've avoided developing because it's hard for you to develop those parts. And so it's by virtual necessity that what you need is where you don't want to look, because that's where you've kept it. And so when you see these stories of the hero, journeying to unknown lands of terror and danger, that's what happens to you. It happens to you all the time. You're in this little safe space like the Hobbit in the Shire, and then there's a great evil brewing somewhere, and you can no longer ignore it, so off you go into the land of terror and uncertainty. And better to go on purpose than accidentally, that's for sure, because at least you can be prepared. And we also know that if you're going to face a threat, if you face it voluntarily, what happens is your body activates itself for exploration and mastery. But if you face it involuntarily, same size threat, then you revert to prey mode, and you're frozen, and that's way, way, way more stressful. It's way harder on your body, and so it's better to keep your eye open and watch for emergent threats, because you all know, what you're not doing quite right and where your life is likely to unravel. You all have a sense of that, and the best thing to do is to not ignore that, to pay attention to it, to watch it, and to take corrective action early, and then, you stay on top of things, and your little trip to the underworld might be a few minutes long instead of a catastrophe that produces post-traumatic stress disorder, knocks you out for 4 or 5 years, and maybe you never recover.
Wow.
So one of the things you need to do if you're going to be a human being is to prepare yourself to be useful in the face of death. And so when you have a parent that dies, which shatters people's ideas, often they can't even think about it. If you can't even think about that, man, you've got some thinking to do. because you need to be able to at least think about that, because otherwise you're just going to be a wasteland when it happens. And you never know, you could even have a higher ambition. Maybe you could even be useful when it happens, instead of being part of the heap of destroyed people who also have to be taken care of.
I love
you know,
that.
and that's brutal. You have to be brutal to be useful in the aftermath of your parents' death. You know, you don't get to crumble and fall apart, and no, you have every reason to. So you got to be
That's why that
kind of
movie
some
is
tough
amazing.
monster to manage that. But do you want to be useful in the face of tragedy, or do you want to be pathetic? Well, you make your choice.
And I think what is so important that to understand in the sense of why men are called to be this way, and why we are attracted to that, is because we too are supposed to be doing the same thing. Like it's in order for it to all work in a proper form is if we both are doing the same exact thing. But if one is being called to do so and is, but then the other is not even confronting the darkness at all, and not deciding to even face those things within themselves, ladies, that then how can we even know what the issue is? How can we even know where to begin? How can we even know how to move forward? Because we won't even address it. We refuse to. So that's why men are like, well, I will go on my own way then. See you later, because I'm going to do it whether you do it or not. So that's what it is, ladies. We have to stand up and decide, are we going to do what's right as well? Because just as the men are called to do it, so are we.
If one is fighting to be better and the other one is forcing the other person to fight to be better but not doing that themselves, it's going to make both parties incompatible.
Yeah.
They're not going to be compatible because one's doing the work, the other one isn't.
And that's why we're sitting around wondering what's going on, because we're not doing any self-worth, any self-evaluation. And so that's why we're in the state that we're at. And so God bless you guys. In the comments, I know this one was a little bit different than what we normally do. But if you would just let me know in the comments how this fits into what I'm trying to talk about here, as far as with ladies understanding that you're wanting this nice guy, but really you're wanting a man that can overcome, and how we just get that so confused. And I'm just curious I love your personal stories. Those are the best, because hopefully at some point ladies will go and read these things and realize that, dude, we are part of the problem. It's not one-sided, you know? So thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one.